Hi.
Hi.
What are we doing?
We're sailing our fantastic boat.
What is
From
it?
Connecticut to Seasprite 28.
So yesterday we drove normally a 4-hour drive, 6.5 hours of traffic. Got to the boat. What time? 7, 8 o'clock?
Yeah,
Yep. Loaded up the boat, left about 11 p.m. It was Sunday, November 5th. Sailed all night. Still sailing. Now it's 8:20. We sailed 53 miles in 8.5 hours. And we were able to do it all on a beam reach. Didn't have to tackle. Where are we supposed to get to today?
hopefully we're supposed to get to Hellgate.
Yes. Go for Hellgate tonight. That's an East River of the Hudson River, so it's next to Manhattan. So go through Manhattan. You have to time the tide on that just right. So we have to. We can't really enter the East River before 6 p.m. tonight with the tide. We're probably going to get there around 3 or 4. So I just anchor for a couple hours, take a nap, make dinner, clean up the boat, move on for the night. So Bridgeport is right behind us. Probably can't see it, but Bridgeport is behind us. That would be I guess that would be the western shore of Long Island Sound. Long Island, New York. It's right over there. Right now we're going against the tide, about a 1 knot tide we're going against. We're making about 5 knots of boat speed. So really 6 knots of boat speed with the tide. We were really cruising last night. We had a 1 knot tide going with us, and we had some GPS speed of 8 consistently over 8, and one stretch at 8.5 with the tide. It was a cold night last night, 38 degrees. I slept in the cockpit. You slept down below. Didn't sleep up. Tried to sleep down. I probably slept 2 hours.
Here we are.
Where are we?
We just left. We did the New York Harbor.
So yesterday morning, from our last time, we finished Long Island Sound. The wind lightened up. More motoring. We went to Neil Coyle.
Keep it proud then.
He taught you well. We went. We motored through New York, Hell's Gate. Beautiful night, amazing. Where did we stay?
Stayed at Liberty Landing Marina.
In Hoboken, New Jersey. Sailing through Lower New York Bay. Right at the moment, we're doing 6.5 knots. We found out this boat is surprisingly fast. Don't really know how. Under sail. Motor, not very fast. We were way ahead of schedule for the Hell's Gate tide. So we had about 4 hours we kind of had to burn, where we were only going like 2 knots. But we were going that slow to wait for the tide. So we still did over a 5 knot average for the trip. For 100 plus miles yesterday. 24 hours. So we would have been 6 plus knot average if we didn't have to slow down. Yeah, and 12 hours under sail. The sailing was the fastest point. The motoring was slower for what we had.
So where we're headed now?
We are headed into the ocean. If we turn right, we go to Chesapeake Bay. If we turn left, we go to Iceland.
So we can still make changes to our plans.
Yes. What is something that went as you expected and something that didn't go as you expected? It's all pretty new to you. It's all very new to you.
Well, I don't know that I could have really had any expectations. I thought it went exceptionally well. So that has me a little bit worried for the next 24 hours. Because it was so good that I don't think it can get better.
That was our night sail yesterday was really as good as it gets.
From the very little experience I have, in the last 24 hours, I've already done all the things that everybody recommends not doing.
Oh, what are they?
Well, one of them is like leaving your marina in the dark.
Yep.
And arriving in one in the dark. Arriving in one in the dark that you're also unfamiliar with.
And motoring one of the busiest channels
Yes.
there are at night.
At
First
night.
time ever. So we have 28-foot boat here, 3 people on it, no quarter berth.
We're pretty cramped.
It's crowded. We're not really. We didn't maximize our space as best we can. We just don't know the boat as best we can yet. For that. So coming out of Sandy Hook, our first escape is Manasquan if we need it, then Barnegat, then Atlantic City, and then Cape May. But so the weather has been trending better for us. So if it stays the way it is, or if it keeps trending better, we will likely be able to sail straight through to Cape May. So it looks like we should, fingers crossed, be able to make it to non-stop to Cape May. We might have a few hours of rough wind. But got foul weather here, tethers, jack lines on the deck. This is Dyneema on this cleat here. Got Captain Morgan. He's our crew passenger. Just cruising. What was your favorite thing about motoring last week?
I think my favorite thing was that I thought that it was going to be really difficult. And I'm not saying that it wasn't, but that I could do it. And it was just really motoring.
Yeah.
But and it was, it was quiet. It wasn't like a typical day. And
100 miles on one, almost 100 miles on one tack. Hardly even, we adjusted the sails once or twice in 100 miles. Anything else we should say?
you definitely have to go to Hudson at night. To the New York area. I mean, no doubt about it. Don't bother doing it during the day. Do it at night.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Night is better.
Yeah.
It's so much better.
I was never through it at night before, and I was just a little nervous about it, honestly, with navigating at night. I hadn't been through Hell's Gate in over 20 years, so I've been through it, but not that I knew it at all. But that
Tourists would have helped you out if you got
that was the way to do it.
but
All right, what do we have to say about last night? Or yesterday altogether?
Yeah. So it's Tuesday morning right now, 8 a.m. We left Liberty Landing 22 hours ago. We've got 114 miles. It was a slow first few hours in the ocean. We kind of sailed and then motor sailed and sailed and motor sailed. We're probably doing 3 or 4 knots for a while, and then And then the wind picked up, and it was just a great, I don't know, probably 80-mile stretch of sailing from the time the wind picked up. We have 22 miles to the Cape May Canal, and I'll go through the Cape May Canal and up Delaware Bay.
It was surprisingly bouncy even with the slow winds at the beginning.
Yeah, the day before there was strong south wind blowing up the ocean, so it was really big rollers, but not much wind for the sails to stabilize the boat, so it was a bit rocky.
Some of us, names we don't want to mention, may have gotten a bit seasick.
Not throwing up seasick, just uncomfortable seasick. But we're all good.
All good.
What was something that surprised you? Your first time ocean sailing?
No, I think yesterday I was trying to not to feel stomach more than anything.
Yeah.
How long it takes when you see a light, how long it takes for you to get there. I mean, I know it's slow, I know it's slow, but you can see these lights from so far away.
Hours and
I
hours.
saw Atlantic City for so long, and then I never did see it because then I went to sleep, and then we were walking past it.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see a light for, way off in the distance, and you don't really have depth perception at night that well, and you don't know how far away it is, and it can be appear to be in that same spot for hours. It's also surprising how uncomfortable it is on the boat when it's not windy.
Yes.
That's an uncomfortable stretch.
The sky was so clear, and it was so dark that just seeing the stars in the sky.
Yeah, the stars were amazing. Wasn't quite, we weren't quite far enough away from light pollution to see the Milky Way. We were about 5 to 7 miles offshore for most of the trip down the coast. Now we're about 2 miles offshore. And it was pretty windy, and the wind was changing direction on us. It was turning behind us, so it was starting to lift us, and we couldn't stay on a broad reach, on a deep enough broad reach point of sail to make it without jibing and going around. And it was windy when we did it, so we did a chicken jibe. We went up and tacked around and through, and that was actually with all this. We just bought the boat, so when we took it out for a little shakedown cruise, we only did one tack and about 5 jibes in about 2 hours of sailing, and then we fixed some things and figured out how to pack and left. So last night, at night sailing, pretty strong wind. That was only the second time we tacked the boat, and it wasn't the cleanest tack. So be a good thing to practice a couple times. How quickly your boat comes through a tack and how quickly it straightens out. But we're hand steering the whole way. I don't know. You and I, what do we have? I don't know exactly, but I think you and I had almost 10 hours. Ty and I, we probably had 10 hours on the helm last night, and then took about a 3-hour nap, and Captain Morgan took over. Now we're about ready to take over for her, and she can sleep. Hi.
Hi, you start.
It's 8:10. Today's Thursday? Yeah.
Yes, it is Thursday.
It's Thursday. We realized it's Thursday. November 9th. We're tired.
It's 8:10.
8:10. 8:10-ish Thursday, November 9th. So we just went 36 hours from Liberty Island, New York, to Chesapeake City on the C&D Canal. The C&D Canal is from the Delaware Bay. to the Chesapeake Bay, and that's where we're going, to the Sailing Associates, the north end of the Chesapeake Bay on the Sassafras River. So our last little recap was yesterday morning after our night sailing. So then, that was yesterday.
It was kind of uneventful. It was just mostly cruising along the.
Well, after the morning.
After the morning, I think we had just passed Ocean City.
Mm-hmm.
I believe. So we cruised along for several hours.
Nice sailing. Nice, light, easy sailing, just cruising at 5 to 6 knots. Beam reach, broad reach. Seas were gentle. Really just a very pleasant temperature. Nice sailing.
We saw 2 whales. We saw a couple dolphins.
Mm-hmm. Some pelicans diving. There was 2 dolphins that were pretty close to us. We saw them following along in a wave behind us just briefly, and then it wasn't like they were jumping up and down next to us, but they, followed us briefly. That was cool. The whales were cool, for sure. We went through the Cape May Canal. It saves quite a bit of time. We're in a smaller boat, a 28-foot boat. Went through the canal, and we were going to anchor there and wait for the next tide to go up the bay, but our timing was really perfect to just cruise up the Delaware Bay. There was a pretty decent wind against current initially, and we tried to sail a little bit up the bay, but it was just, it was right exactly the heading that we needed to go, so it was just tacking back and forth, and we wanted to keep up with the tide. So we just went back to motoring, and then a little while later the wind died off, and it ended up being glassy flat, and we were cruising with the tide. We were doing like over 7 knots for a pretty good stretch, and we just rode that tide all the way up the bay into the canal and to Chesapeake City. Chesapeake City is a cool little town. There's a little man-made cove, I guess, for boat traffic on the C&D Canal, and a nice marina here. The facilities at the marina are really nice, but the dockage is very tight. It's hard to maneuver in and around. There's a free dock, a Freetown dock. That's where we're at, and
That's good. I'm gonna take off and bring this boat home.
And sleep. Coming up the Delaware Bay last night was, after it got dark, it's a pretty, kind of the north end of the Delaware Bay. It's like really heavy commercial traffic. You have the Philadelphia, and that ships are coming into and out of, and tugboat traffic, and there's a lot of navigation lights and markers, and they really blend together. And after that long stretch, it was a little tricky figuring out which was which and where we were going. And there was a tugboat coming down, pushing a barge, and all those lights blended together, and we couldn't really even decipher it was a tugboat, and I didn't even really notice it. And I started steering across. We weren't in any danger of getting run over or anything, but then they turned on their searchlight, shined their searchlight at us, so we just steered back out of the way. But there was a lot going on, and it's a little extra tricky after all that ocean sailing. We don't have autopilot, and we have a tiller, so we're hand steering everything.
Are we sailing today?
Hopefully. There's wind. There's a little wind right now. Let's go. Do you have enough coffee?
No.
What's our plan, Katya?
We're going to go anchor the boat and go for a swim. Cook food. Relax.
What's today's date?
November 9th.
Going for a swim, November 9th.
It's about. Is it 60 degrees? I think
It's got to be at least 60. You can tell by the clothes we're wearing.
66 degrees.
Yep. We're dressed for 45 degrees. Our core temperature has just recovered from the last 36 hours. So we thought we'd cool it off by going for a swim.
This seems awful, like an awful idea. I cannot do this with the phone. I have to grab the phone later. And then we can take pictures from off the boat.
Ready?
Ready? If you're not jumping in, I'm jumping in. I'm gonna be mad.
I'm jumping in.
All right. 1, 2, 3, go!
So when did we buy this boat?
So we bought the boat on 10/18. We went up and we looked at it and we put an offer in on the way home.
And that was a Thursday.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And today is November 9th.
It was a Wednesday.
It was a Wednesday, okay. Oh, so then so that was the first day we looked at it. First time we saw it.
First time I saw it.
In Mystic. Then that was October 18th. So then the next week we went on Thursday, I think.
We went on the 26th.
So that was a Thursday. So the next week we went on Thursday we didn't do a survey with a surveyor, but we just went to go through everything with the owner, hauled out the boat, pressure washed it, checked everything over. Looked good. Then we paid him, got whatever paperwork we could get then. And Keith, our yacht broker, really nice guy.
Yeah,
go ahead.
No, he met with the seller the next day, finished the paperwork and overnighted it, but because it was a weekend, we got it on Monday.
And what day was that? I mean, it was a Monday, but... Because then on the next day...
Right, so... October 26th. Oh, the 31st. We got the paperwork on the 30th, and then on the 31st we went to Maryland to register the boat.
October 31st, yep. So we officially owned the boat then.
Yes.
And then we went back on...
The 1st and 2nd.
1st and 2nd with Jack.
November.
Yeah. We originally were going to sail it to Stamford, Connecticut. But we just worked on the boat the first day. Realized the bilge pump didn't work. We fixed that. Jack fixed that. Organized stuff. Then we realized we ran out of time. Jack makes amazing wine. We drank wine.
Amazing wine.
The best wine you've ever had, wine. What?
Then we still worked on it all morning on Friday.
Yeah. And we still hadn't sailed the boat. And I was like, we got to sail this. Because we knew we were going to be leaving. Our plan was we were going to be leaving at night. That was Friday. So then, what day? So that was...
Well, the Friday... Thursday,
Second and
Friday was
third.
first. Yeah, 2nd and 3rd. 4th was Saturday. 5th was Sunday.
Yeah, so November 3rd, Friday, we knew we were going to be leaving Sunday night. And we hadn't really been out of that channel. So we wanted to go out of the channel during the daytime and have it on the chart plotter so we could follow it out at night on Sunday. So we officially owned the boat on Halloween on the 31st, October 31st, and then 2nd and 3rd, or 1st and 2nd? 2nd and 3rd?
2nd and 3rd.
2nd and 3rd we went, worked on the boat with Jack, came home, and then on the 5th we went with Linda to leave.
Yeah, pretty immediately.
Yeah, like as soon as we got there we packed up and left.
Packed up and left.
And we left at like 11:30 or 11:50 at night. And Paul drove us up, and so that was Sunday. and now today's Thursday, and we sailed
So
330 miles, I think.
one, let's see, 1, 2, 3. So we owned the boat a total of 3 weeks and 1 day
So far.
so far.
No, it's been that long. Really?
Well, I guess not owned it, but
From when we did the
from
paperwork.
when we did the offer to
Or from when we paid for it, I guess.
no, when we decided this is a boat we wanted,
Okay.
they accepted our offer.
Oh, okay.
I guess that's not technically owning, but
Because then it was 8
from
days
when
later.
we decided, I guess this is a boat we want.
Mm-hmm. So then it was 8 days later we went back and actually paid for it. Yeah. And then, I forget, how far did I say we sailed?
300 something.
Well, our first leg was 112 miles. Plus maybe like 5 miles because I didn't start it right away when we left. So say our first leg was 117 miles from Mystic, Connecticut to Liberty Island, New York. Then we went from Liberty Island to Chesapeake City, which was 199 miles. So that would have been like 324 miles. And then we sailed 25 miles today so far.
Yep. We should talk about why we chose not to do a survey. People are going to be wondering why we would be crazy enough to buy a boat that's 40 years old, not surveyed, and then taking it on a long trip.
And getting insurance.
And getting insurance.
Yeah. Great question. Great topic. We didn't get a survey because we're cheap. We didn't get a survey because I certainly don't have the knowledge of a surveyor, but I have boat building and design knowledge, and I've just been around boats for quite a while. And the boat owner he was really meticulous. You can tell like everything was well kept up on the boat. There was no typical like wear and tear signs, no like gel coat cracking, no soft spots on the deck, and just everything was so neatly organized and tidy and clean. And he had a pretty good record of maintenance with the boat. And everything just looked like it was in great shape. And we were willing to get a survey, but the surveyors were pretty booked for like 3 or 4 or 5 weeks. And then if we did that, then the boat would have stayed up in Mystic. So instead, we decided to sort of agree with the owner to... Oh, the other part too was we offered... The listing price was $18,500. We offered $16,000, and he said, "Okay, I'll take that, but basically don't like nickel and dime me on the survey." So we knew, there's always something to fix, and we knew that, sure, a couple little things would pop up on the survey, but at the price, the owner wasn't going to give any more anyway. So we did pay for a haul out and pressure wash, and the main thing of concern was just to see if there was any visible blisters on the bottom, and that the rudder still seemed structurally sound. So that all seemed good to my novice boat building eye. So the boat's a 1982 Seasprite 28. Really great condition. Surprisingly, if you look at the specs and everything, it seems like it would be a really slow boat, but a surprisingly nice sailing boat that moves along. A lot of insurance kind of cuts you off at 40 years, which just seems odd. But Progressive was the only company that we could find, either on our own or going through an insurance broker, the marine insurance broker, that would give us insurance on the boat without a survey. Insurance really isn't that expensive. It's only $600 a year anyway.
Yeah.
For liability and for covering the boat. So it's not an outrageous price.
If you could do something different between leaving on Sunday and now, what would it be?
Initially, I would have liked to have left earlier Sunday in the day, but it worked out so perfect.
In our favor.
Yeah, it wouldn't have mattered. I don't really know that there's that much different, or really anything, would have done different. I felt really good about that Thursday and Friday when we came up and went through everything. We realized the bilge pump wasn't working properly, so we got that going. And then we got an emergency backup drilled bilge pump, and then we also have a hand pump bilge pump, like a gusher. So we really have 3 bilge pumps on the boat, and we didn't take on like a drop of water anywhere. I think we didn't really have any shift schedule. So we just sort of went with it, and when somebody was tired, they slept. And it got pretty exhausting. And it is kind of hard to sleep on demand.
Yeah.
But I think if we had a regular shift rotation, and even if you didn't sleep during that rotation, if you were just like laying down, kind of resting on your off time, it would have been less exhausting because, you know, we didn't have a Dodger and we were hand steering the whole way. So it would have been, that would have saved some energy. But it was really good. It was really good to stop for the night at Liberty Island, and we all just had a good night's sleep before we headed offshore. And then we just had a long stretch. That was 36 hours yesterday from Liberty Island to up to the Chesapeake Canal, and I was exhausted. And you were.
I was done.
And Linda
checked out.
Linda was done. But yeah, like clothing wise, food wise, provision wise, I felt good really about everything. How about you?
Same way. I don't know that there's anything we could have done differently. There was definitely not really anything that we were underprepared with. As a matter of fact, we have so much food left over that's probably going to go in the trash. Because we made it there. We made it here so fast.
Well, yeah. That's another thing. We were planning. It's a 28-foot boat with a 22-foot water line, and we were really planning like 100 miles a day was what the boat would do. And we just cruised. Like the boat sails great. We did like 150 miles a day without a problem.
Yeah.
And we watched the currents, so we timed our trip with that, and that was a huge help. All the way down Long Island Sound, we had about a 1-knot current going with us, and we were consistently doing over 8 knots of GPS speed sailing, like 7 knots of boat speed sailing, 8 knots of speed over ground. So I mean, that's a huge difference between going 5 knots. So I mean, we just cruised, and we thought leaving. Ideally, the goal would have been to have left at like 6 p.m. on Sunday, and we would have made the 6 p.m. tide through New York City Monday night. But we didn't leave till almost midnight on Sunday, and we were hours early for the tide. Yeah. We had to wait 3 or 4 hours. So we think we left off sitting on anchor at Turner's Creek because we were only about 2 hours away from Sailing Associates here, and we were both like, we don't want this to end. So we anchored, took a quick swim in cold water, made a nice meal, laid down, took a nap-ish. Then 6 hours later, the wind came back. And we sailed from 8:30 p.m. till 1:30 a.m. And we tied up here. And that was it. Coming in. So what did we do what are the things we did that you say you shouldn't do this on a trip?
Do we want to work our way backwards or from the front forward?
From the beginning.
From the beginning? Trip. Well, first thing probably is getting onto a boat that we are super unfamiliar with.
Yeah.
And starting out at night in the dark.
Right. We sailed this boat for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Before we left. the day we left at 11:30 p.m. and we were not well rested.
After we already had a full day, and really
Right.
just a full weekend of planning, not
Yeah.
planning, but like preparing
Yeah. So
with very little sleep
right.
and a lot of driving.
Yes. And it took forever to drive to the boat. It was like a 6-hour drive. Crazy traffic. So that was the first thing. So we left a harbor we were unfamiliar with at night.
In a boat we're unfamiliar
In a
with.
boat we were unfamiliar with.
Not rested.
Not rested. And we had no proper set up shift routine.
No.
We just were
Like flying by the seat of our
Yeah.
pants.
whoever should sleep whenever they're tired or try to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the first thing. Then we really didn't keep a proper logbook much at all. We started for the first hour. Then it dwindled.
Do we have an entry at all? Like, do we have a first entry?
We do.
The first is probably also the last, right?
No, I think there's 2 entries I started with.
Our first entry is C. 1 second.
It's a Seasprite 28.
What do we have? We have... Oh, okay. We have 11.5. Nawang, Linda. Clear. Oh, the sky is clear. Location. We have latitude and longitude. You have 2 entries for that night.
Yeah.
Linda and Dave on the helm. Sky is clear.
So we started at 10:45. No ank.
Mm-hmm.
Linda was on watch, so I guess we left about 11. And then, so Linda drove till 0:35, I guess, till midnight, 12:30, and then I drove, and that's it.
But you wrote on there that it was spectacular.
Linda wrote that.
Oh, okay. Proper enough.
Yes. So we watched Captain Ron yesterday after sleeping in, and his logbook entries were more detailed than ours. So we didn't keep really a proper logbook. And then we did pretty good that first day.
Yeah.
Like with sleeping, with no proper shift routine. Like whoever slept when they wanted. You slept a little bit first, I think.
I laid down, but I couldn't sleep.
Yeah. Yeah. And I sort of slept a little bit in the cockpit. It was all exciting and new and adrenaline going, so it wasn't really much sleep for either one of us. And then we went through. So you're not supposed to go through a harbor you're not familiar with at night. So we decided to go through New York City at night, which really, in the end, really wasn't bad at all.
No. Mm-mm.
The city was so well lit. The water was, it was kind of easy to see on the water. A little bit hard to see the aids to navigation marks because of the city lights.
But I think also at the same time it's a trade-off because you're not going during the day where it's much busier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was no boat traffic
No.
at night. I don't think.
I think we had one.
There was some.
1 or 2.
There were some ferries.
Yeah, the
Some
ferries.
water taxis and ferries when we got into the city, but leading up to it, there really wasn't any boat traffic.
Yeah. I would highly recommend going at night. That was beautiful.
That was one of the highlights.
Mm-hmm.
And then we pulled into, so that was our thing at night you're not supposed to do. And then we pulled into Liberty Landing Marina at night.
Some place we were completely unfamiliar
Right.
with. Again.
We thought Linda was familiar with it because she talked to the guy on the phone for like an hour. Like it was her best friend. And we pull up and she's like, I've been here twice and the most recent time was 25 years ago. 20 years ago. I don't remember anything.
It looked more industrial way back then.
Yeah. And it was really straightforward going into it, but it was just hard to see the entrance because it's in Hoboken, New Jersey, and you have all the lights shining out on the water from the city, and you just can't see. It was just really hard to pick out the entrance. But going in was really straightforward.
Yes, it's difficult.
And then we slept 12 hours. Then we left for a 36-hour stretch that I slept about 3 hours in that 36 hours. How about you?
I don't know. I don't remember. I probably slept twice. I wouldn't even know what time. Maybe 5?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. You were a little seasick in the beginning because it was like there was strong wind the day before, so the seas were kind of swelly and big once we got in the ocean. But there wasn't much wind when we were out there to start with, so the boat was it was rocky. It was like kind of bobbing like a cork around in the big swells and not much wind to stabilize, to have that wind power in the sail to stabilize the boat from rocking. So that was, luckily that ended. And then once...
Weirdly enough, though, the one thing that they tell you not to do is come down here into the cabin. That totally helped. Just lying down here and curling up. Yeah.
And the way this boat is set up, it's a deep cabin. So you're down very low, so it's more stable, and laying down helps for sure. And laying, even for me, if I was feeling like, I just felt the tiniest bit of nauseousness, but not enough to really stop me from feeling like I needed to do anything. But for me personally, laying in the cockpit feels nice because you can lay down there and being outside feels good, and you kind of have the breeze across your face.
Yeah.
So that helps for me, and being on the tiller helps. Sort of like if you're seasick, if you're car sick.
Yeah.
In
if
a
you're
car,
driving.
it helps if you're driving.
I think at that point I was just too cold to be out there.
Yeah.
So that didn't help me.
And we brought a Mr. Buddy heater
that we didn't use.
We didn't use until we got to Sailing Associates. That would have been very helpful to use to take the chill out.
I know, because it was twice where I just couldn't function because I was so cold.
Yeah. And then, so that was pulling in Liberty Landing at night. Then we pulled into Chesapeake City on the C&D Canal at night. And Linda was kind of hallucinating from sleep deprivation, convinced that tugboat lights were an airplane in the water. Katya was freezing cold. Then I woke you up to tell you we were coming to the canal, which is kind of cool.
Yes. And then I came up and you guys were hallucinating, and I thought, no, I'm too cold to even to even deal with that. I'm going to go try to warm up.
Yeah. I thought tugboat lights were range lights, and then they shined a searchlight on us. So I quickly moved. That was the end of a 36-hour stretch with 3 hours of sleep. Coming up to Delaware Bay at night, one of the busiest bodies of water. So much commercial traffic. Yeah, like oil refineries and shipping ports, and tugboats, tons of aids to navigation lights where you're trying to figure out what's what. Unmarked buoys you're trying to find before you run into them. There was a lot going on. Linda convinced that a tugboat was an airplane in the water. That didn't help anything. But then it all worked out. If you're not sure, just slow down a little bit. It's not a race. Get your bearings. So then we pulled into Chesapeake City at night, and that was no problem at all. And then coming here, instead of pulling in here during the daytime, we thought, well, we pulled into every other place at night. We might as well wait till dark and sail.
Clearly, we didn't learn anything.
Right.
In 3 days.
We ended up being pretty close to an unmarked buoy that Katya was driving. We could see the lights of Sailing Associates. We're like, oh, well, there it is. and I started packing up the sail, and I didn't see it on the chart or the navionics on the phone. I didn't see the unmarked buoy, and we were like 30, 40 feet away from it. Pretty closer than we would have. Yeah, closer than it would have been good. And there's a mooring field out here off Sailing Associates. I forgot it was there. And Kai is like, isn't there a mooring field here? We're driving through the mooring field at night.
We had the best sailing at the end of that night, but it was probably not smart after that long trek.
Yeah.
Completely sleep deprived to go back out and sail another 20 miles and just really push our limits.
It was amazing sailing.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was not smart adult making decision. Adult decision making.
No.
That. So that's kind of the mistakes we made, I'd say. But our weather planning, our route, like all that worked out perfect. Our tides, our currents, planning the currents, that just lined up as perfect as it could have been. Our food, water, provisions, we didn't run out of anything.
Nope.
Had a bit left over, but not like a ridiculous amount left over. So it's,
Like we have a lot of dry food left over, but we don't have a lot of fresh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is perfect.
Yeah, that worked out really well. So was there any time that you felt, or what was the most nervous
I think it was the first night trying to sleep in the dark, and I didn't have not that I don't trust you or Linda, but it's just, that's a lot of trust to just let yourself fall asleep while you're sailing in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that I was worried about us doing something wrong. It could be somebody else on the water that doesn't do the right thing and that we don't see, somebody that we don't see.
Right.
So that's why I didn't sleep. I was just laying here listening to all the noises and just be like, what if there's another boat? What if there's something we're crashing into?
Yeah.
That was the most difficult. But after you sort of like break that eventually, and you just know, your body just gives up and you do fall asleep, it's like, okay, yeah, you can do this again.
Yeah. So Linda who is she? So why don't you explain Linda?
Linda is a salty old captain that is your friend and your old sailing instructor from 30 something years ago. Maybe not 30, not quite 30, but
yeah, from 1999.
Yeah.
I met Linda. She's an old delivery captain. Never stops talking. I mean, never stopped talking. If she was awake, she was talking.
Would be talking.
If she was on night watch at 3 a.m., I was dreaming that I was hearing Linda's voice in my sleep, and I woke up, and no, I wasn't dreaming I was hearing her voice. She was on the phone in the cockpit, eating SpaghettiOs, talking on the phone, smoking a cigarette, and hand steering a tiller boat in the ocean.
She cusses a lot, but she'll be the best entertainment you'll ever have.
And all this wearing petty officer wool coat. So we have 2 podcast interviews with her. Mm-hmm. So she left in Chesapeake City. When we got Chesapeake City in the C&D Canal, she basically ran off of the boat. Linda was done. So the most panicked I was on this entire trip was last night.
Right, yeah.
We were tied up at Sailing Associates. Today is Saturday morning. We got here technically Friday morning at 1:30 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
Tied up over on a face dock, and then we pulled into our slip Friday afternoon.
But which, by the way, was the one thing that didn't go right on the trip.
Yeah. We ran aground coming into our slip. Because we gave them the specs to our boat, and for some reason they thought we had a 2.5-foot draft, and we have a 5-foot draft. And it was very fortunately, it was low tide when we were coming into our slip. And there was a reasonable current that I had to steer up into. And I steered up into the current. I was like, wow, this is a stronger current than I thought. So I gave it some throttle. And then You're
Yeah, I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, we're not moving as in at all. We're not budging. Not
right.
even like, an eighth of an inch. We're just sitting there.
So we ran aground like 50 feet from our slip. And then, we turned around. The owner of the marina happened to be walking down the dock when we turned around, and I called over, "Hey, Andy, we don't fit in our slip." And he said, "What's your beam?" And I said, "It's not our width, it's our depth. It's not deep enough." So fortunately, they had another slip, deeper water slip, that we got into, but it was, that was our biggest boat issue of the whole time. Trip. But then last night, sleeping, I don't know. It felt like the boat was rocking, but maybe sometimes after you're on a boat for a while, your body is still rocking when the boat isn't. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if the boat was rocking or if it was me, and I was dreaming about ocean sailing in this trip, and I kind of woke up to sort of look over. I could kind of see the chart plotter from my bunk, so I woke up, looked over at the chart plotter, and it was dark. It wasn't on at all. And then I was like, "Who's at the helm?" And then my bunk's on the starboard side. Kathy's bunk is where we're sitting on. And I was like, Kaya, wake up! Where are we? I was like panicked. And you're like, "Dave, we're tied up at Sailing Associates." And like, I didn't know what Sailing Associates was. I was like, "What? Like, where's that?"
I think that took me a second to be like, why do you not know where Sailing Associates is?
Yeah.
I just told you exactly where we are.
Right.
In our slip.
Yeah. And I was.
You looked out, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You didn't believe me.
I had to look out and look around because I was just convinced we were in the ocean and nobody was at the helm. And lost. Because even any other time when I'd lay down, I just like mentally knew where we were. Mm-hmm. And when I woke up, I would kind of like mentally have an idea of where we were from like, okay, I slept. I had my eyes closed for 2 or 3 hours and we've been going 6 knots. So I kind of like just had that situational awareness. But my gosh, last night, and we went to sleep at like, I went to sleep about 7. Mm-hmm. You went to sleep like a little bit after.
Yeah, I was just on my phone a little bit longer.
And yeah, we woke up at 6. So it was like about 11 hours of sleep. And I feel amazing.
I feel pretty good too today. Yesterday I was still worried that I'm going to have to recover like all weekend.
Yeah.
Today I already feel a million times better because that was like a solid 10, 11 hours.
Straight, except for me panicking in the middle of the night. It was 9 o'clock. It was 9 p.m. was my panic time. So it wasn't even like...
Was it really?
Yeah.
I felt like I slept already hours at that point. I was deep in my sleep.
Yeah. And that was the most panicked. That was the only time I was really nervous about anything on the trip. Really.
I think there was one other time I was a little nervous. Not as nervous as falling asleep the first time, but when we left New York Harbor and it got really rocky in the very beginning.
Yeah, that was rough.
And we were about to head out into the ocean.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right. I was pretty confident the entire time, but now all of a sudden I don't know that I have it in me.
Yeah. Yeah. The waves are different. Definitely different in bays and harbors than the ocean. So, yeah, that was we were getting spray over the bow. It was, it was a chop.
I don't know.
Anything you do differently next time or next trip?
I think we talked about that already, but really? I think, I do think, I don't know. I think we talked about that, but yes, I think there has to be better scheduled times for rest.
Yeah.
Everything worked out perfectly the way it did time-wise. 100%. It could have not been any better. But I don't know that it's a good idea to start out at night
You're right.
unrested because you cannot. Maybe some people can, but most people probably won't be able to sleep on command. You are so excited that you just got on the boat and you're getting started.
Yeah. Yeah. Try to get a good night's sleep. And the day you leave, unless you're trying to catch tide or beat weather, you know, like I've heard it in other podcasts and people say it, the day you leave, you don't have to wake up at sunrise and leave.
No.
Just wake up because you're going to be sailing through the night anyway.
Right.
So if you're not trying, you know, beat tide or, you know, current or weather for something, just sleep, have a nice, good breakfast, be well rested, be well hydrated, and get going when you're ready. That would definitely, because you're not going to sleep, you know, I just get so excited about it. I'm not going to sleep right away anyway. I'm not going to get on the boat and sleep in an hour.
Yeah.
And also a little just, you know, making a little nervous in a sense, making sure everything's settled in and going smooth. But our fastest stretch our longest stretch was 36 hours and 199 miles in 36 hours. A little 28-foot, the Seasprite 28, which is pretty quick. We had this boat is perfect size, absolutely perfect size for two people to cruise on. Really super comfortable sleeping. We need lead cloths, which would help, and it would also just help keeping gear that's on your bunks when you're out during the day from falling all over. So we need lead cloths, and it's good. Three people on like a 24-hour trip would be fine.
Yeah.
But 3 people on like a multi-day trip is a little crowded on here.
It's crowded. If I were to do one thing differently,
Yeah.
we would have a functioning head.
Yeah. We weren't sure if the head worked because the previous owner just used it as pretty much just like evening day sailed with this and, you know, around the marks racing. So he just had a pee bottle and he never used a head. So we just pumped some RV antifreeze in the head, and then at some points that was leaking out a little bit, but there wasn't anything in the head except for that. So he must have had the holding tank really pretty well cleaned out. So it was just a little bit of that RV antifreeze coming out. So right from the beginning, we were a little nervous about using the head, and it's a good thing we didn't use it because then it would have leaked.
Also, one of the reasons was we didn't know if the pump out stations would still be open by the time we got here, since we couldn't be certain we were going to get here.
Right.
In 3, 4, 5 days.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So we didn't want, because this is November. Marinas are closing. It's not as easy getting a transient slip. They're winterizing their stuff for the winter. That was a big part of it too. That was probably almost more of a part than thinking the head might leak.
Yeah.
So if it was,
that was like the original thing.
Yeah.
That we were not gonna.
So if it was September and we did this, we would have just used a head like normal.
Right.
And then it would have been leaking.
Yeah.
Which would have been awful. But yeah, so we did 359 miles and we sailed the boat for 2 hours before we left on it. And tidied up some stuff, but overall, like, super happy with this boat. It's sailing and it sails great.
It sails so great.
And if you look at the stats on the boat, it's not a fast boat, and the sail area to displacement ratio, like, it shows it being a super slow boat, but this boat moves along. And then at our marina here, this is Seasprite 28. There's another Seasprite 28, which is kind of odd because they're not a very common boat anyway. And our boom is pretty low. Like, can you stand under it when we're sailing?
Like touching.
Yeah.
Maybe just like slightly ducked.
And you're 5'2".
I'm 5'3".
5'3", sorry.
And I believe a half. A quarter.
How thick were your shoes when you were standing?
What would you say? Inch and a half?
Yeah. That thick? So maybe the boom clearance is 5'2".
Yeah.
And I'm 6'5". And then there's a Seasprite. There's a Seasprite in Des Marina. We were looking at that yesterday. And their boom is, it looks like it's almost a foot higher than ours. So I think the previous owner probably lowered the boom to have more mainsail area for racing. But there were some stretches. We had some reasonably light wind, and we were still just we were moving along just fine. Like the way this boat is set up, in like 6-7 knots of wind, like you can still sail, which is really surprising. How much sailing experience do you have?
Again, not a good log keeper. I started sailing I was on your boat the first time in, was it June?
June.
The beginning of June?
This year.
This year, 2023.
First time ever on a sailboat.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're amazing. Like, that is no sailing in the ocean on a broad reach, hand steering a tiller with no dodger in November in so you and I, we did like 10 hours, probably about 10 hours straight in the cockpit. And I did the first 5 hours of those 10 hours when it was a little rougher. And then the way the Jersey coast came out and the wind direction, we knew it was going to lighten up once we got around Barnegat Light out in the ocean. And it was probably 20 to 25 on a broad reach, on a starboard tack broad reach when I was steering. And there wasn't like huge surfing waves, but there was waves, rollers that we were surfing down. Yep. And we had a preventer rigged and a little 28-foot boat, still yawls and rolls. So it's like trying to not jibe, and we had to stay on as absolute much of a broad reach as possible to avoid having to get too close to land and jibe and come out. So that was what was a little bit tricky about it. And then we got past Barnegat Bay, and we were able to steer a little bit less. We would have been able to steer a little bit less of a broad reach, but the wind was shifting also. So we still had to stay on like as much of a broad reach as possible. And then that's when you drove, and I just laid down in the cockpit on the leeward side. Well, we had tethers on. So we were strapped in, and that's that takes some skill not to underestimate for a few months of sailing experience.
Anybody can steer a boat.
No. Not anybody can steer a 28-foot boat on a broad reach in the ocean with a tiller, no dodger, and following seas and surfing waves.
I got a lot of time in, thanks to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We sailed a lot.
We did sail a lot.
Like 30 days? Yeah. And on a bunch of different boats.
On a bunch of different boats, yeah. Like normally if you were to just like pick it up, most of the time would have to pay somebody.
Right.
Even if you buy your own boat, if you don't have really anybody to teach you.
Yeah.
And you're just like muddling your way through. That would be way more difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've been sailing 30 years, and I got my captain's license 2 years ago, and I started teaching ASA sailing classes. But I haven't had any really overnight passage making sails since I was much younger, before kids and a family. So this was my first overnight trip like in charge. And well, I never had an overnight trip where I was like captain. And we did have Linda come with us, but it was more. I mean, I felt like I was more captain than her.
For sure.
So it was a learning experience for both of us, and it worked out great. And we're like not going to sell the boat now. Yacht broker said, sometimes your first trip is your last. You might sell it.
I had that in my head the last 3 weeks, every day. I'm like, oh, what if this is going to be the breaking experience after having been so excited over the last couple of months and having so much fun sailing?
Yeah. No, it was not a... what's the opposite of a breaking experience?
I don't know.
It was like a building experience.
It was a building experience. It's a bit of an addiction.
Yeah.
Like after 339 miles and 5 hours of sleep, who goes back out and sails another 20?
When you're only 2 miles from where your destination. And we told them at the office yesterday, we were like delirious yesterday. And there's a little restaurant right next to the marina. We didn't want to do dishes, so we had lunch there and a couple drinks. And it was like, I mean, I barely knew how to spell my name for signing the slip paperwork. And then we pulled into the slip, and I like could not figure out how to tie up the boat properly. Slip after we ran aground. But yeah, it was. And then this morning, sunrise, beautiful. Walked out to the end of the dock. My coffee, just standing there by myself. I'm like, let's start the engine. Like, I'm ready to go. We have enough food. We can get more along the way.
Yep, we could.
But, all right.
All right.
Till next time.
Till next time.
Time to go home and back to real life.
Be responsible again.
Be responsible adults.
Yeah.
Adulting.